Welcome back to the Rowdy Studios. We've got Dustin Long from Landmark Newspapers. What's that? That's the Virginian Pilot.
Roanoke Times, News and Record in Greensboro, North Carolina.
How'd you let North Carolina in with all those fine Virginia papers?
And Le Monde in Paris.
and there's some papers in Maryland. Also do some writing for SI, Sports Illustrated.com.
So
You're just all over the place. Anyway, we're discussing the 5 new inductees into the NASCAR Hall of Fame. We're down to our 5th and final guy. Actually, the first guy that got announced, Glen Wood.
Yeah, and you know, Glen was the surprise, and I'll be honest, I thought the guy who was going to get in was going to be Cotton Owens, because there was a lot of discussion for Cotton Owens, a lot of support, and you could kind of see things building almost in a way that it happened last year with Ned Jarrett and Bud Moore. So I knew. I had a feeling there was going to be a surprise out there. I kind of thought, to the fans, I thought it would be Cotton Owens, but it was Glen Wood. I think the key was during the discussions, at one point there was talk about, asking, NASCAR about, hey, can't we pair the Wood brothers together, because Leonard and Glen were both among the nominees, and wanting to put them in as one vote and putting them together because everybody saw them as being together. But then Kyle Petty spoke up and said, look, he gave us an impassioned speech saying, they were different. And Glen was a driver and the car owner. Glen won races in the various divisions in NASCAR in its early days, including Cup. Glen kept this team going. Leonard was the mechanical wizard. Glen was the true owner in a sense. And this is an organization that's won at least one race in 7 decades. I mean, that's just an incredible.
Including this year's Daytona 500.
So I think that certainly helped to keep bring him back into the public eye and just to kind of remind the voters of what he did. And I think he. We've talked about, Darrell, Cale, Dale Inman, and Richie Evans, but none of those really go back to the early days of the sport, being among the pioneers. Glen Wood covers that, and I think it made it easy for people to vote for him for what he's done over a long period of time, but that he was also there in the early days, and so a pioneer is represented, because there's been so much talk about trying to get the pioneers in the Hall of Fame. And he wasn't on my ballot, but he's certainly a worthy of this honor, and I have no problem with him getting in.
Was he surprised?
He was pretty emotional.
He was pretty surprised. I mean, I asked him afterwards, and he said that he didn't think he was going to get in. He didn't think it was his time. He was hoping sometime in the next 25 years.
Yeah.
And I think in talking to I talked to some voters who said, Kyle's speech changed their vote. And one person I talked to was Mike Joy, who said he thought it would be an easier route for the Wood brothers to get in the Hall of Fame together as opposed to separately, because it was going to make it tough for the voters to pick which one, and thought that they would their votes in a way will almost cancel each other out. I think what's going to be interesting next year, because as of right now, typically they roll over the 20 nominees and then you add 5 new for 25, that I almost wonder if the room won't vote for Leonard Wood as of right now for next year, for the next class, and that way, that's a way of the voters reuniting the Wood brothers, not being able to vote for them together, but getting them in back-to-back years. And since as of right now, there isn't that superstar candidate that you look at on the surface of paper and say the
person that was obviously passed over that has to be in.
Yeah.
Tier.
So I think next year's going to be an interesting one, and I think Leonard Wood has a good shot of joining his brother in the Hall of Fame.
You've been talking a lot through the course of these conversations about looking for game changers, and getting back to Glen Wood, he's got to be considered a game changer. I mean, he basically invented the modern pit stop, as you said, 1 in 7 different decades. I mean, he is that game changer, isn't he?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, he's a guy that deserves it. I don't know if many people could have an argument against putting Glen Wood in, other than saying, hey, you need to put the Wood brothers in. That was not an option for us. So
what's going to be interesting in that regard is Holman Moody. How can you split those guys up? That
was something that was mentioned in the room, was just, needing to pair the Wood brothers, needing to pair Holman Moody. But then again, who else are you going to pair together, and how are you going to define that? Do you put
Bass and Cutler?
No, I'll go in first.
Yeah,
I don't know.
well, I think he's going to hold you back. So I think you want to go in on your own.
That's true, Dustin. Thank you. Good
Thank
advice.
you, Dustin.
Good advice, Dustin.
So I think that's going to be challenging. I mean, how do you, if you start pairing people together, where do you draw that line?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, obviously the Flock brothers.
Right. You got 3 of them.
Plus the monkey.
Yeah.
Taco, exactly. Right.
So would you look at combining them, or do you look at them on their own? Do you start combining fathers and sons and things like that? It can become, quite a muddy thing. So I think that in this sense, it's not the easiest decision. It makes our job on the panel harder, but it's probably the right decision to look at each individual. It's not about the team, it's about the individual. However, when it comes to Holman Moody, whenever they get nominated, that's going to be a challenge.
Yeah,
absolutely.
All
Well,
right,
listen.
Dustin Long from more newspapers than I have digits. He writes for. Thanks for sticking around. We appreciate all of this stuff. You were inside the room voting for NASCAR Hall of Fame. So watch all 5 videos in which we discuss the various inductees.
Rowdy.com. Say it like it is.
Say what like it is?
Rowdy.com.